Hello, I'm Tom Turgeon, and I'm from Bows and Arrows. We make bows, we make kits, we have all different sorts of kits. We teach classes all over the United States. We work directly with the wounded warriors, teaching them how to make their longbows, and have been based out of Idaho for the last 20 years or so. A little bit about myself as far as how I got started. It's one of the main questions I get asked is when I was 7 years old, I ended up not being able to have, or not being allowed to have a bow of my own. So I took a piece of sumac, bent it over my knee, took some baling twine, and that was my first bow that I had ever built. 40 some odd years later, we built it into a business, and we teach all over the country and teaching people not to make sumac bows anymore, but bamboo-backed exotic wood bows. We have lots of different kits. You can find us online at boysbowsandarrows.com. And again, we're based out of Boise, Idaho. As far as my background making bows, I've already said, I started making bows out of sumac. And then we took, we being my brothers and I, would take maple or hickory saplings and bend those. Of course, we were bending them the wrong way. At the time, we didn't realize the tension needed to be on the opposite side of the bow. But little by little, I went from building bows out of saplings to building bows out of logs and splitting them, and then into board bows that had been kiln dried, and then into bamboo backing bows. Once I started teaching, I would teach self bows. That's an unbacked bow, that it's self-reliant. For instance, hickory or osage, maples, ashes, the elms, we would make bows out of that. If you came to my class, you could pick from one of 10 different domestic woods. Since then, I found that the better way to teach someone to understand how to build your own longbow is basically get the process down. And I found that bamboo-backed yellow heart bows is really the way to go, to have people understand how to make a bow in the entire process, especially when you get into making bows for your customers, such as, they may want a 48-pound bow at 26.5 inches draw length. You need to know how to take that material off correctly, make it bend correctly, shoot correctly, reduce hand shock, and make functional works of art, basically, is what you're doing. A lot of folks have asked me over the years, how many bows have you broken? Well, the answer is probably around 3 dozen. And you're thinking, if he's a master bowyer, how can he possibly have broken so many bows? They don't ask me how many I've broken in the last 20 years, which you can reduce that number to maybe a handful. Like anything, when you're trying something new, you try to push the limits. Sometimes you don't even know those limits. So I was asking, for instance, I would ask hickory to perform like a maple bow or a osage bow, and it just can't do that. There's different properties and different dimensions you have to abide by to make certain bows out of certain woods. The more forgiving woods are hickory. Pardon me. A lot of people do they do start there. It's relatively inexpensive. Does it make the best bow? Not necessarily, in my opinion. Did Native Americans live on hickory bows for millenniums? Absolutely. They used what was available to them. They were also taking much shorter shots, etc. Once you start getting into understanding tension in the wood, now you you bring yourself to a completely different level. You're taking something that can bend one way or the other. It can bend side to side. It can bend straight up and straight back. By incorporating bamboo backing onto a tension side of the wood, now you're really starting to understand how a bow functions. It's not necessarily only how it looks or making a bow. It's making the best bow out of the ingredients that you're going to glue up and laminate. Getting into the lamination aspects, there was plenty of times that I would try different things and it wouldn't work. Different combinations wouldn't work. The bamboo would overpower some of the belly woods. Sometimes the belly woods would overpower the bamboo due to the thickness that I left on or the thinness of the bamboo. Yellow heart seems to want to push it back, and bamboo wants to pull. So yellow heart can handle the compression, whereas something like cherry, it cannot. You can use cherry as a laminate, a thin laminate. It's more for aesthetics. It's not necessarily for strength or for function. There's a lot that goes into it. I think if you were to take a class, it's just like anything. If you were going to become an accountant, you probably wouldn't stay at home and teach yourself math. You would take a class on math, and then that's a stepping stone and go forward from there. I do know that by taking a class just about with any subject, you're going to jump yourself ahead, and the learning curve is going to be much shorter because you're going to get there faster with someone who knows what they're doing as far as teaching you. So as far as the different woods are concerned, we stick to about 12 different woods. I've used hundreds of different combinations of varying types of wood, domestic and exotic, and I think I've got it pretty much nailed down to my personal favorite. Other people may have their personal favorites. I know what works best for me and for nearly the 3,000 students that we've taught over the last 22 years, and I'm pretty sure they're pretty happy about that too. Yeah, as far as my passion for archery and for building bows and teaching others to do the same, it really stems from being a 7-year-old and shooting arrows into a summer sky and just watching it soar and trying to figure out how many arrows have done the same. And I mean, I still go into some of these wide open meadows that we have out here in central Idaho and shoot arrows and just to watch them fly. And it's something artistic and graceful and all of it, and it's still so primitive at the same time. Then you throw in the added ingredient of making bows for yourself, and now you know that you took a stick that was nearly unbendable, and you took it, and now you're launching arrows off of it, and they're going nearly 200 yards, and just to watch that happen with something that you created, not with power tools, not with machinery, not with full-blown shops. With basically, you can make it with a knife, and as long as you have a string, you can make yourself a bow. So I guess to answer the passion question, I just never got tired of that passion, and I want other people to enjoy that. And to date, about 3,000 people have taken my classes. They've enjoyed that same thing. You can see it in the videos, on the class videos on my website. You can see their faces just light up because they really don't believe it until they shoot their first few arrows off of that bow. That passion is relived every single time you see someone shoot a bow that they built for themselves. As far as the seminars that we conduct all over the United States, different cities and clubs and schools and some of the other retailers that host our classes. We do private classes as well. But it seemed like 22 years ago we were taking 9 different species of domestic woods and teaching 13 different people how to make those into bows. I believe at this point, looking back, I think that the classes today, as they should be, are much better because you're using one wood combination and everyone's learning the process. I think it's more important to teach the process of bow building than it is to actually teach someone how to make a hickory bow or an Osage bow or a vine maple bow, yew bow, etc. I think you're better off teaching people the principles, and then they can take those principles and practice, take another stave and make a bow. I believe that you can take a laminated bow, teach someone how to make, or stave, pardon me, and make a bow out of that stave, and then go backwards and take a piece of wood or a split log or a sapling, but you already have the principles down. So then you go back and you apply those principles to a self bow. I think it's better for a student to learn that way than the way that I learned, taking sticks and limbs off of trees and making them into bows. This is much more straightforward. When you're laminating things together, you're controlling a lot of the little nuances and aspects of the wood that can get away from you if you're just making self bows. I definitely have heard this for years and years. Have heard that, I tried building a bow, but it broke. I tried doing this and it broke. It split, it twisted. These types of things don't happen in our classroom because we're fabricating the materials that we're making our bows out of, as opposed to depending on nature to cooperate. I'm being completely honest with you when I say, my passion for archery leads me to teaching my seminars all over the country. I'm fortunate to be able to stand in front of people, teach them something that I enjoy, and they get something out of it. For instance, the wounded warriors, it gives them time away from their injuries and their rehabs and the situations that they're being faced with. But going around the country, teaching at 30 different states and meeting people from all over the country, and we all have one common bond, is that we have a love of archery, and that by far is the best part of my job.